I'm joined now by Khail Yousuf from the Ahmadiyya Muslim community and media commentator and former Sunday Mirror editor Paul Connew. Khail, do you find it offensive?
Yes, I do find it offensive. And whilst there absolutely has to be a right to freedom of expression, I think there's a distinction between the right to express oneself freely and the right to cause harm.
But Charlie Hebdo not doing what it had done before in this instance, surely that means the terrorists would have won in some way?
No, not at all. I mean, this is a very sad time. We absolutely condemn this violent and nasty murder. And I think that now was the time to provide some kind of response to what had happened, not by publishing the cartoons and offending 1.7 billion Muslims, but in fact by honouring those individuals that were murdered.
Paul, a lot of our viewers think the same thing. Della Hobbs says it won't help matters at all. It's just going to fuel the fire again, so to speak. Marta Atala says no, they shouldn't. Full stop. Why don't they publish Jesus or Abraham or Buddha? It's pure provocation. Anger triggers more anger. Shouldn't they have just done something else this time?
I think it was inevitable after a tragic and a horrific event that dominated the global news headlines that they were going to address it, and they were bound to address it in their traditional format of lampooning humour. You know, I can understand totally why many Muslims, some of my Muslim friends were, were offended by what Charlie Hebdo had done, some to varying degrees. But I still feel, though, that free speech is vitally important, and I do think the British media have been rather oversensitive and overcautious in the last few days by not at least producing one or two of the magazine cartoons, for the simple reason that big news stories require context, and in a sense you were reporting horrific crimes and killings, huge demonstrations in the streets of Paris, triggered by these controversial cartoons,
yeah.
Yet you weren't allowing your readers and viewers to actually make their own minds up by showing them the context in which this had happened and what had triggered it.
Well, let's just put this into context itself. Why is it offensive to draw an image or project an image of the Prophet Muhammad?
Look, the images that Charlie Hebdo had published in the past, and indeed other newspapers, were highly offensive to Muslims because what they did was they denigrated the character of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. You know, the life of and character of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was actually to provide freedom of expression and to provide support to those who had different views.
Because images per se of the Prophet Muhammad are not offensive. There are images in Tehran, for example, that are 5 stories high of the Prophet. There are images in Egypt, etc.
Well, not cartoons.
Not cartoons.
But there absolutely should be a right to freedom of expression. Nobody's saying that. What we're saying is that you should not exercise freedom of expression in a way that causes harm. Look, the British media historically have been very responsible. They have said, look, we have a broad responsibility to society and we're not going to publish the cartoons. And that is in line with the limitations that we already have on freedom of expression. Look, you can't be racist, you can't be homophobic, you can't be anti-Semitic. So why should there then be a distinction between racism?
Just very quickly, Paul, I want to ask you, though, about, Charlie Hebdo's print run previously was 60,000. They were struggling. Tomorrow, it's going to be 3 million, and that's funded in part by the French government, who's donated €1 million. Google's donated. Our own Guardian media group in the UK has donated. That puts a whole different perspective on it. They're now complicit as well if Muslims are offended by this.
Well, indeed, but also the brothers who committed this horrific crime, it's a cruel irony, but they have become de facto almost the PR team for
so they draw more attention to it.
Suddenly this magazine, which was on its last legs, is now become a global phenomenon.
It has.
Backed by George Clooney and governments, as you say, Google, etc.
I'm afraid we're quite out of time in this discussion, but I should just quickly mention a couple more messages. Rebecca Haslam thinks it's the right thing to do. All is forgiven is a powerful statement, is what she says. And Ben Wilkins, yes, of course, is called free speech, but as we've established, that comes with some sort of responsibility. Thank you both very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Thank you.